Hakadosh Boker Tov Masechet Yevamot Daf Daled Amud Aleph 54a1. The Gemara was saying yesterday about how exactly is it going to be a case where it was going to be honest and he was going to acquire his Yevamah. If he had relations with his Yevamah, be honest, so therefore how does it become honest? There's no such thing as honest. We said yesterday, if it was right now the Goyim came and they forced him to have relations with his Yevamah, it says it's not called honest. Why? For a male organ to become hardened, it has to be that a person has it in mind. So if he has it in mind, that's midat, right? Nobody could force that on the person. So we answered that he was sleeping. So he said if he's sleeping, he's not going to be koneh. A guy's sleeping, he doesn't acquire anything. He's patumi, he's everything. He doesn't have mind, right? He's yashen. He's sleeping. The Gemara, Ella, but rather he says benitka. What was the case nitka? Again, as we said, he was with his wife on the roof. So he became aroused because of his wife. So therefore the kishui was ladat, but there was still had to be honest. Now how could be honest? If you want the Yevamah, it's not honest. So he says no. Rabbi says nafal min hagag benitka. He fell off the roof. And he was nitka with the woman which is underneath, and it was again his yevimto chayav be'arba dvarim, right? So first of all, if it was stam a woman and he was nitka ba, so now he has to pay 4 different things. Yeah, what does he have to pay for? Nezek, tsar, ripui, vashevet. He has to pay for damage, suffering, for refuah, and shevet if she doesn't unemployment, if she can't work. Right? So means he went and he got into her, boom. Right? Now, right, you're still missing also the boshet. Now he's not going to pay for boshet. Right? Why is he not going to pay for boshet? He says because so he says over here he's not going to be chayav unless he has kavanah to be mazik. And here he had no kavanah to be mazik. We're on the top. Now to do with his yevamah, lo kana, he doesn't acquire her. Which means that if he fell and he had relations with her because he fell on top of her, right? There was no kavanah. If there's no kavanah, he doesn't acquire her. So what does it mean that the Mishnah says then that in the case of an honest, the Yavam is going to acquire the Yevamah? Even in this case, he doesn't acquire the Yevamah. So says the Gemara, Ela kegon nitkaven liishto utkafato yevimto ba'aleha. What happened is that really bemet, he had kavanah to go with his wife. And then what happened is that Bishatya Maaseh, the Yavam knew that he was being Moel Yevimto, but it was neged retzono. Right? So what happened was no. Nitkaven liishto. He does have kavanah for his wife. Yeah, because if he's going to be on her, so then the kavanah, then the action is on her. So and again, that means it was ladat. It wasn't honest. Here, no. Nitkaven liishto. So the kishui was the dat. The kishui was be'emet for ishto, which is 100% heter. Everything's fine. But now the honest was that he went with yivimto instead of ishto. I don't know what happened. They got switched. Whatever the case was. 100%. Yeah. Exactly. So therefore, that's a problem. So he comes and he says, 1 second. So he says the Gemara, shnehem anusin de'Rabbi Chia hechadam. So what's the case that both of them were honest? You just gave me a case where he was honest, Kilu. Why? He wasn't honest with the kishu, because the kishu has to be ladat, so it was for his wife. But then all of a sudden something happened. The wife had to go, and boom, it was now the Yevamah. So now it was negative. It was against right his will, right? Kafato yevimto. It's much more than much that she forced him, right, to do it with her instead of the wife. So that's shalom irtzono. So now what's the case now that both of them are going to be honest? So says the Gemara, what happened was he had kavanah for his wife. And then all of a sudden what happened is that the Goyim came and they forced him onto his Yevamah. So therefore, since he was already aroused because of his wife, he was honest because Be'emet, he wanted with his wife. His arousal, the Kishu Yadat, was for his wife. So that was Be'etet. But now the Nochrim came and they forced him on her. So she didn't want and he didn't want, but they were forced together by the Goyim. And now what happens is, so that's Shnehem, honest. Yeah? So says the Gemara, how do we know, right, the Mekor of our Mishnah, that a person is going to acquire his Yevamah, whether it's going to be Shogeg, Nezid, honest, right? Ratzon, this, that. How do we know that? The Tanur Rabbanan, we learned in a Braita. It says, Yevamah Yavo Aleha. Where does it say it? Wake up. Yeah? Devarim. Yevamah Yavo Aleha. Yeah? So it says, mitzvah. What does that mean? There's a mitzvah, which means there's a mitzvah to do yibum more than chalitza. Davar acher, another explanation. No, if you remember, we saw it was a machloket. You remember? Rabbi Yochanan Shakish. Rabbi Yochanan Shakish. What is more of the mitzvah? Yibum or chalitza? Says the Gemara, davar acher. Of course it's a mitzvah, but which one is the more of a mitzvah? Which one is a mitzvah? Yeah? So says the Gemara. Yeah, so he says over here, davar acher yivama yavo alea bem beshogeg bem mezi bem memonos bem ratzon. Which means that since it says yivama yavo alea ulkachal lo isha, it's kilu we're learning that any type of a likuchim, any type is the same thing. So says the Gemara, one second, but one second, you can't learn from the same pasuk two different halachot. If you're telling me now that it's a mitzvah to do yibum more than chalitza, so you can't tell me from the same words yivama yavo alea that it's in any shape or form that you're ba'alea, that you're going to come and you're going to do that. So says the Gemara, no, you're right. It says la mitzvah, that yibum is more than chalitza, you learn it from the lo yachpot ish. Meaning from the fact that the Torah right afterwards says that if the person does not want to take her, so it's mashma that the first mitzvah is to take her. Now if you don't want to take her, then you do chalitza. So it's mashma that the yibum is a mitzvah more than chalitza. So we don't learn it from Yevamah. Yevamah yavo alea, you only learn aval the mitzvah, you learn from hachafetz yabem. But if you did want to, you would do yibum. So what is the pasuk coming and teaching you? Yevamah yavo alea ben beshogem mezi bemonos v'ratzon. Tanya yidach. The other writer says Yevamah yavo alea kedarka. When it says that the Yevamah has to have relations with her, it means kedarka, normal relations. Ulkacha lo leisha shelo kedarka. It doesn't matter. She doesn't have to be led. There's the yibum. But first of all, there's the yibum. What is the yibum? The Mishnah says that even shelo kedarka, he acquires his Yevamah. Even shelo kedarka. Right? What does that mean? Shelo kedarka, because it says ulkacha lo leisha. Ulkacha means to take her like a woman. When it says, right, take her for a wife, it's already shelo kedarka. Because remember, right, any type of arayot in the Torah, there's also an isur shelo kedarka. Meaning, if a person goes with a married woman, shelo kedarka, he's patur, or sure not. It's a isur doraita. He gets the same chenek. What? 100% no. But I'm just saying though that what about death? The death penalty, right? The death penalty. No. He's right that there's an isur, but the death penalty. The death penalty. Nachon, for sure he's over an isur. He's over an isur doraita 100%. But what about the death penalty? Death penalty is only on the actual relations. So he says, but the actual relations doesn't matter whether it's kedarka or shelo kedarka. It's the same thing, right? It doesn't matter whether it's normal way or the abnormal, right? Fine. V'ibem. What does it mean v'ibem? So he comes and he says, biya gomeret ba. When it says v'ibem, it has to be yibum, which is biya, but not kesef ushtar. V'ibema be'al kurcha. When it says v'ibema, meaning it says v'ibema afterwards, so it's even against shogla. That's be'al kurcha. Davar acher, another explanation. Another explanation. Yevamah yavo alea. Yevamah is going to have relations with her ben b'shogem mezid. So says the Gemara, v'apikte lekedarka. He says, one second, I thought that you said that was for kedarka. So he says, no. When it says that he wants to make a name for his brother, that is where you get from kedarka. Meaning when it says the words that he has to be mekim shem to his brother, that has to be kedarka, because that's the only way that it's going to have children. Right? Right? That's the place where it's going to have Hashem. So now when the pasuk is going to come and say, Yevamah yavo alea, it's whether it's going to be shogeg mezid or ones or ratzon. Gufa. Yeah? Gufa says like this. Amar of Yehuda says of Yehuda. Yashen. What does it mean now, Yashen? Lo kana bivimto. Right? So if a person is sleeping, he does not acquire his Yevamah. The Amar Krabba says in a pasuk, Yevamah yavo aleha. What does that mean, Yevamah yavo aleha? Ad michaven la leshem biyah. He has to have kavanah that it's for biyah. Okay, so now when he's going to be yashen, he has no kavanot. Right? He doesn't have shara kavanot mata shu yashen. Nachon? And no kavanot. Very good. So it says the Gemara Tanya. What are you talking about? It says mefurash the right. Ben er ben yashen. Whether he's awake or he's asleep. So it says the Gemara Ema ben era ben yashena. No. For her, whether she's awake or she's asleep. So it says 1 second. What are you talking about? Tanya, we learned the right of ben er ben yashen. Who ben era ben or he ben yashena. He doesn't matter whether who or he or she. Doesn't matter who it is. They're sleeping. So it says no. It obviously has to be mitnanem anyway, right? You know why? Because if not, it's a suit anyway. So it had to be mitnanem. But he's saying no, they were dozing off. What is mitnanem? Ravashi says nim velo nim, tir velo tir, which means he's yashen velo yashen, ve'u'er velo er, which means he's awake, he's sleeping and not sleeping. He's awake, he was not awake. If you go on, for example, the karole ve'aneh, that they call a person and he answers, but he doesn't know sfarot. They call you, yeah, but you're going to ask him now, he's not going to know what he's talking about. But once you remind him, he'll remember. He will remember. Okay, fine, nekuda. We're going back. Gufa. We said in the Gemara. Amar Rava says, Nafal min agag v'nitka. Imagine a person falls from the roof and he's nitka b'isha, which was below. Chayav, so he's chayav in 4 different devarim to pay her back. Even though, but if it's going to be with the zivama, he's not going to acquire her, right, with this biyah. So says the Gemara, Benezek b'tzar b'shevet v'ripui, aval boshe lo mechayeh. He's obligated to pay her nezek, tzar, shevet, ripui, all these things, but he's not obligated to pay her for boshet. The Marmar Bazmur says, en chayav ala boshet that she'it kaven. A person is only going to be chayav on boshet if he has kavanah to do something. If there's no kavanah, there's no boshet. Imagine a person has now tunat derachim chasashim. They have an accident. He doesn't have to pay for bullshit. He had no kavanah to do anything. So if he doesn't pay for bullshit is you have to have kavanah to do it. But he does have to pay everything else. He has to pay for damages, for suffering, for curing, right? For the unemployment, right? And also nowadays that's something. Okay, fine. Bullshit exactly. Bullshit, embarrassment. Yeah, busha. Okay. So Amar Rava says, imagine right now he wanted to go to the wall and instead he went to his Yevamah. Lo kana also, right? He was not acquire her whatsoever. Here it says that even if he thought it was another woman. If he thought it was another woman, he is koneota. So he says, but if he had the kavanah to go to the wall, there was no biyah bichlal. So even though at the end he got his yevamah instead of getting to the wall, right? He still says over here he's no kana. If he had intentions to go with an animal, and instead it was the yevamah instead of the animal, there he is koneh the yevamah. Why? Because he didn't want to have biyah. Meaning the fact that he wanted to have a biyah, right? Even though he wanted to go with an animal, and all of a sudden now it was the yevamah instead of the animal, he is going to be koneh ota. Fine, 2 dots. Okay? Echada me'areh. Yeah? Fine. Says the Gemara. Echada me'areh. We're talking about now that somebody that did hara. Remember, hara means that he didn't completely come and break. He didn't go completely into insert through, right? All the way. So it says here like this. Amar Ula. Ula says, Minayin le'ara'a mina Torah. How do we know that hara is considered like gemar biyah mina Torah? So it says, Shneimah, it says in Pasuk, V'isha shilishka v'tisha dava. A person that has relations with a woman that she's a nida. That's why she's dava, like she's sick, so therefore it's like a nida. V'gila et ervata, and right, he revealed her nakedness. Et mekora hera. So it's mekora, her right, her mekor, her womb. He was hera. What does it mean hera? Mikal hera mina Torah. So from here we learn that hera is chayav mina Torah. So ashkecha nida, but that's only by nida. Shara rayomina. How do we know that by any other erva it's the same halacha? So it says the Gemara, maybe you're going to learn from nida. Manida shkem mitamiyat go'ala. The nida has a stringency. She's mitamiyat go'ala, which means it is. If a person goes with an eshetish, or he goes with any other type of arayot, he doesn't become tameh. he's going to be chayav, whether it's a death penalty or all the other, but there's no tum'ah involved. The person goes with a nidah. There's tum'ah involved. He becomes tameh, nidah, tameh, just like the nidah, just like the 7 days, right? The nidah is tameh, so too he gets tameh for 7 days. So he says over here, so maybe you're going to learn it from nidah. That just like if a person has relations with a nidah, it's hara'ah, it's considered gemar biyah, it's considered biyah. So too with any other type of immoral relations. Says the Gemara, the nidah is a stringency. So says the Gemara, ela atya, but rather they learn it from eshet ach. Eshet ach. It says in the pasuk, v'isha shedikach et eshet achiv nidahi. Eshet achiv lo nam nidahi. He says what? I don't understand. Your sister-in-law is always a nidah. It says when a person comes and he takes eshet achiv nidahi, what, she's always a nidah? Who are you? It doesn't make sense. Ella, but rather just like a nidah, just like the nidah be'ara'ah, so to eshet ach be'ara'ah. Elmaleh eshet ach shekim yado lerabot tibayim mikadesh vazil ki'alfa. Says 1 second. Says the Gemara, eshet ach is going to be prohibited because of the kiddushim of the ach. You also have a chumrah. What's a chumrah? Shekim yado lerabot. You could have a few wives, right? What does that mean? You could have a wife. He could come and you could get married even to 1,000 wives. And then each time he's prohibiting it to the brother. So therefore, maybe this chumrah is different because obviously the eshet ach is an arayot because of kiddushin, and it continues going. Right? There's no, therefore you can learn hara from eshet ach to other arayot. So he says, you learn it from the sister, from the father, or from the mother. It says over there, you're not allowed to reveal, right, the skin, the flesh of your sister, whether it's from the mother or the father, because your flesh you are revealing. Now, he'era again is hara. So says the Gemara, it says 1 second, that comes without any type of an isur, meaning a person naturally becomes a sur to his sister, whether it's from the father or the mother, because the way that they're born, they naturally become isur. There's no kiddushin. The majority of the other types of things, there's a kiddushin involved, right? You get married to a wife, so now you have, right, your sister-in-law, you have the mother-in-law, you have her daughter, you have this. A person comes and the brother gets married, so now you have the sister-in-law meets the brother. You have so a lot of them, they come through a type of a kiddushin or an action. This is coming from its own. So says the Gemara, you're right. You can't learn it from a nidah or a shetach or a chot aviv, chot imo, because each one has a chumrah. But he says, but you could do a binyanav. You can learn 1 from 2. How do you do 1 from 2? Which ones are you going to learn from? You should learn it from eshet ach va'achotav va'achotem. You can learn it from both of them together. Why? These, they're all prohibited because of she'er, because of kurva mishpacha. So therefore he says, and still there's a tzada shava shemaim. Hara is asul, right? So you can't learn it from other things. Elataiti, but rather you could come and you could say, no, learn it from nida and achotav achotem. Why? Because he says there, right? He says it's also the hara, and you can learn all the harayot from them. So he says, not true. Malhana shkini surah ba me'elav. He says, yeah, but it comes on its own, because all these things, they're coming on their own, right? And not from kiddushin, which is done, that a kiddushin has to be done. So he says, you're right, but rather you have to learn it from nidah and eshet ach. You're learning it from nidah, which comes on its own, but it's not a family member, because any woman is a nidah, is an arayot. And anybody that goes with a nidah, with any nidah, doesn't have to be a family member, he gets karet, you understand? He does a nisur. Eshet ach, no, so eshet ach. There it is a nisur because of mishpacha and because of kiddushin. Because what are you going to ask? So it says the Gemara, matkif la ravacha bered ravika, ask ravacha bered ravika, mal nidah ve'eshet ach, sheken lahem eter b'chayei osran. What about nidah and eshet ach? That there's never going to be an eter when the isur is still kayam, which means the nidah is never going to be permitted as long as she's still in nidah, and the eshet ach is never going to be permitted as long as her husband is alive. So tomar be'eshet ish, but what about eshet ish? Can yesh la eter b'chayei osran? You could, the person gets divorced, and now there's a eter to the wife. That's a shetish. There's always a eter. Divorce, that's it. Okay. Huh? Exactly. So he says, so Elmaleh ravacha midif to Rabbi nisel vach midif to Rabina. Atu nidav eshetach b'chayei osran u'de'en lahem eter. Aval acham gan yesh eter. He says what? For sure, there's only during the lifetime there's no eter, but afterwards there is. He says, what about nidah? Right? Nudal adamubet 54b. Biomet al yamita. Nidah is talui biyamim. Ve'eshetach bebanim tali rachmana. And eshetach, the Torah is going to be toleh to do with children. right? Because even if the husband dies and he has children, she still stays with the Yisur. Meaning, when is the heter of Yibum? Only if there's no children. But if he has children, there's still Eshetach. Eshetach continues at 120. You understand why? Because there's children. As long as there's children, there's children. So it says the Gemara, Ela pari chachi. But rather you have to ask like this. Ma lenida ve'eshetach sheken en osra matiran. It says, what about the nida and eshetach? That there's no such thing as the isur, which is going to permit it. Tomar be'eshet ish shel osra matira. Right? The one that's oserota is matirota, which means like this. By the nida and the eshetach, right? It's something else which is permitting the isur. Whether it's going to be that she goes to the mikveh, passes the 7 days, or eshetach, that the husband dies without children, so that's something else which is causing the isur. Here by eshet ish, the same person which was oserota is matirota. Because it's the same person that gave her the kiddushin is now giving her the get. Right? So it says the Gemara, Elama Rabbi Yonah, but rather Rabbi Yonah says, Vitema Ravuna B'Yeshua, as we said, Ravuna B'Yeshua, Amar Kra, it says in a pasuk, Ki kol asher ya'aseh mikol ha'toevot ha'elu v'nichretu ha'nefashot ha'osot. What does that mean? That anybody that's going to do from all these toevot, right? They're going to get karet. Ukshu kol ha'rayot kulan nida. There's a kesh all the arayot to nida. Ma nida be'ara'ah, just like nida is ba'ara'ah, so too is ba'ara'ah. So it's a hekesh. Hekesh is a juxtaposition. You're not learning it just because of stam. Because if you learn a stam, you could have svara that I want to deter it. I want to throw it off, refute it. But no, I'm learning it from a hekesh. A hekesh means juxtaposition, close proximity, when it's written close to everything else, and that's where I'm learning it from. So why is it written in nidah by eshetach? It says a person cannot go with his sister-in-law. Why? Nidahi. She's always a nidah. Remember that she's not a nidah. So says the Gemara, he says, Ravuna, it's like Ravuna. How do you have a remes to the Yevamah min Torah? So says the Gemara, minayin. What do you need a remes? You have it in Dvarim Mefurash. Right? You have it in Mefurash. So he says, no. How do we know that there's going to be the remes, the Yevamah is going to be a surah even during the lifetime of the husband? How do we know? Which means, what happens if the husband divorces her? How do we know that it's always considered a shadach and therefore you can never get married to her? How do we know that?
If he divorces her?
Let's say the brother divorces her. Can the brother-in-law now get married to her? Eshetach. Eshetach is divorced.
No, there's a get.
No, afilu imu met. There was divorce. Even if he's met, there's a divorce. There's no yibum.
But there was a get.
There was a get. Eshetach is prohibited forever.
והתגרש, אחיו לא יכול להתחתן עם אשתו?
אף פעם.
אף פעם.
אף פעם.
רק שהוא מת, לא?
No, because even if we met, if there was a divorce, then there's no yibum either. אשת אח. No, היא לא אלמנתו. הוא גירש אותה.
לא, אמרתי רק בסיטואציה שהוא מת, הוא יכול להתחתן.
Exactly. Only if there was a yibum. Only if there's yibum. Exactly. Only if there's a yibum. Exactly. Only if there's yibum. So says the Gemara, אלא רמז ומה שהצורה בחיי בלה מיניים. Haisvara, we said it's svara. Since the Torah says only la'achar mitat bala sharia, only after the death of the husband is she permitted. So therefore it's a svara that during the lifetime it's going to be prohibited. So says the Gemara, no. Dilma la'achar mitat bala mitzvah. Maybe after the death of the brother, it's a mitzvah to do yibum. But during the lifetime of the brother, maybe it's a reshut that he could get married to her. Meaning, if he wants, he can get married to her. Once he doesn't need to. He could decide, right? That's a svara. Yeah, it's a svara. It's a logic. So says the Gemara, Inami, if you want, you could say, la'achar mitab bala'in, v'chaya bala'lo. Even if you're going to tell me that after the death of the husband, you're allowed to, and during the husband, no, during the lifetime, no. So therefore, it's a negative commandment, which is coming from a positive commandment. So therefore, that's considered like a positive commandment. What does that mean? Just like bitul mitzvah taseh avibum is not the karet, so too there's not going to be a karet. You're going to be over on the love that comes from it. So therefore, you needed a hint from the Torah to teach you that there's an onish of karet if Be'emet he went with her. Okay, so there is a karet if he goes with a sister-in-law after divorce. Okay, so Amarka, so the pasuk says, a person is going to come and take his brother's wife. She's a nidah. What? She's always a nidah. So he says, Ella kenida, like a nidah. Just like a nidah, even though there's a tel lachar mikem b'shat yisura b'karet, but there's a karet now. So to Eshetach also, even though there's going to be a tel later on, where's the tel? Boom. It's going to be karet. That's the explanation. So that's what we're learning. We're learning in mamash. That means just like a nida, as long as she's a nida, there's karet. So to Eshetach, as long as there's going to be bechaye bala, it's going to be karet. Okay, so says the Gemara, Ela hara, but by hara, dichtiva gabe achot av ve'achotem. Lamali, why do we need this? So says the Gemara, lechidavai menim Ravina and Rava, just like Ravina needed from Rava. Hame'are bizechur mahu. What happens if a person came and he did hara with a male? What's the halacha? Yeah, he did mishkav zachor, right? Mishkav zachor, but he didn't do complete. He didn't fulfill it. So says the Gemara, bezechur mishkavei isha ktiva. One second, it's written vet zachar lo tishkav mishkavei isha, which means mishkav zachor is domel mishkav erva. So just like right now, you told me the hara is asur, so it's the same thing. So what's the difference then? So he said, no, you're right. In achanam. So that means hara also by zachar. It's a b'diuk oto davar. Ela me'areh be'behema ma. What's the halacha by me'areh by behema? So he says, what's halacha? So Elmaleh, he says, Imenu yala hara dichtiva gabe achot achotem. Tata b'keshem in Rabbi Yonah. The behema. He says, one second. Where did we learn? You remember it was written hara by three people. Achot av achot em, by eshet ach, and by anida. All three cases. And then we wanted to learn from those three to everything else. Each one had a question, so we deferred it, we refuted them. But then we wanted to bring it from two, and each one still you weren't able to. And then we learned it from Hekesh, from nida. So says the Gemara, 1 second. I learned the reason for the nida, for Hekesh, for everything else. I learned by eshet ach to tell you that if a person got married to a sister-in-law after she was divorced from the husband, it's still karet, just like a nida. Why do you need achot av achotem? So he says you need achot av achotem for behema. That hara, because you already learned achot av achotem, you learn like any other arayot from nida. So I have it extra. So that extra is teaching you for behema. So says the Gemara, michti, 1 second. Behema chayaveh mito bedin. If a person goes with an animal, he gets killed by bedin. My tamaktiv hara did this. Why is it written hara? Why is it written? Only by achot av achotem, which is only chayve kritut. So lichtav gabe mitabedin. So learn it by mitabedin. And ela mitabedin. Just learn it from mitabedin. Which means if you already had it from, right? One more time. Achot av achotem is karet. Okay? So why is it that we didn't learn the hara by a mitabedin? For example, his mother or mother-in-law. And then I would have known that also the other mitabedin, which is behema, is the exact same thing. Why did I learn it by achot av achotem, which is only a karet? It's not a mitabedin. Okay? You understand what happened? Well, that's the question. So answers the Gemara, the entire pasuk where it's talking about the brother, means the father or the mother, is a drasha. Right? This brought down in actually next week's parasha, not this week's parasha, next week's parasha, Kadoshim. Ketiv benami la'amin. So this is also a drasha. What is the drasha? Right? Well, much later on. Right? What is the drasha? The Tanya, as we learned, right, in a braita, ervat achot avicha lo tegale, ben mina av, ben mina em. When it says, this is the pasuk. The pasuk is, right, in parashat acharemot, this week's parasha. Ervat achot avicha lo tegale, whether mina av or mina em. So that means, one more time, ervat achot avicha, right, we're talking about the ant, right, achot avicha lo tegale. So it says here the katuv is said achot aviv ben im achoto mina av or ben im achoto mina. So ataumen ben mina mina and ola mina av lo mina. Maybe it's only for the man and not from the woman, right? Meaning from the father, not from the mother. So it says the Gemara v'dinu. It says the kal v'chomer chiyev kan v'chiyev b'achoto. If it says it's karet by achot aviv, and you say that it's going to be karet b'achoto, so just like achoto doesn't matter whether it's mina mina av. So 2 years ben mina mina av. Or maybe you go the other way around. Chiev kan b'achot aviv, chiev bedodato. Maybe there's also on the ant. On the ant, there's also karet. Okay, so ma dodato, just like dodato is from the father, so too, right? So and not from the mother, right? If you remember, the Gemara is going to explain this. That means basically, if somebody goes with his ant from the mother, there's no karet. It was only from the father. So to here, it's mina velo minaem. So he says, nit ele mi domeh. What is it more compared to? Danini sura ba me'elav, ni sura ba me'elav. I'm going to say that achot aviv comes on its own because she's your sister automatically because of your father. so too it's from achoto, which is automatically. Don't bring a proof from the aunt, which is the Isura Ba Me'elav, which is coming, right? So that it's not Isura Ba Me'elav, but it's only because of Kiddushin. Meaning your aunt is only because she got married to your uncle. Okay? Only because she got married to your uncle. So it's your political aunt. They say in, okay? Oklach lederzu, go the other way around. Tanin mikrovei ha'av. You learn from the krovei ha'av, mikrovei ha'av. Ve'al tochiach achoto shekrovei atzmo. And you're not going to come and you're not going to bring it from achoto, which is from the achot aviv, which is krovo atzmo, which is achoto, because of the kurva, not because of krovat aviv. So Talmud Lomar comes to teach you, ervat achot avicha lo tegale. Ben mina av, ben mina em, it's all the same thing. Ervat achot imecha lo tegale, ben mina av, ben mina em. So basically it's coming to teach you from both sides. Doesn't matter, means it's coming to include your achot avicha, right, which is going to be your sister, whether it's from your father or from the mother, okay? And the same thing with achot imecha, whether it's achot imecha, right, mina av or mina em. In a few minutes, okay? So says the Gemara, okay? Velama li michtav bachot av, lama li michtav, why do I need both? If you already told me by achot avicha, and that applies both achot avicha and achot imecha, and then it tells by achot imecha, achot imecha, and it applies ben mina av mina minaim. So why do I need to write both? It's both mina av ben minaim. So Amar Rabbi Avu says Rabbi Avu tzricha, I need both of them. The Torah wrote by bachot av sheken yesh la chais. There's yichus by achot av. But bachot em, it's not miyuchas acharimo. Elmaleh, I would say no. V'ikatav rachmana, and if it was only written by achot em, I would have said, but it's for sure. Aval achot av, elmaleh, because it's not for sure, which means this. Each one of them has a plus. By the father, whoever said it's your father. So you're right, nowadays you have DNA testing, you have this, and even that, remember, the more that the science continues evolving, the more they're going to say that they have, once upon a time they said with the blood test, and that was 100%, kilu, not 100, they'll never say 100%, but they'll say it was like 99%, 100% accurate, that it's what? That it's the father, right? And therefore your brothers, but now they say the DNA is much stronger, and they continue going, meaning that the more that evolves, the more that, so therefore you're going to say, it's not for sure. Maybe I met, brothers and sisters. You understand? Not only that, a lot of times they don't even do a DNA test unless they have the suspicion of something. Meaning there's no reason right now that a person ever do a DNA test if he's check if Bemet his brothers or his brothers. There's no reason to do it. All of a sudden there starts questions or there's a doubt. So all of a sudden, one second, so let's start doing things. And then they start, but if not, people don't start doing all these tests. So he says, so the father is not 100% badai. So therefore you need this drasha. But by the mother, it's not miyuchas acharimo. Like why? But the yichus always goes after the father, not after the mother. Meaning, whenever we're talking about yichusim, it always goes to mishpachta av, right? Kriya mishpacha, mishpachat em is not. So he says, "Vedodato the pshita leletana de mina av velo mina em menale." How do we know that dodato is dafka from the av and not mina em? How do we know that? So he says, Rava says, Atya dodo dodo. It's a gzera shava, dodo dodo. Ktiva, it's written by Erva dodo gila, that he revealed the nakedness of his dodo, of his anure, of his uncle. Ktivatam o dodo ven dodo yigalenu, or that he has to come and he has to redeem. Just like over there, it's dafka mina av velo mina em. So to here it's mina av velo mina em, which means this: who redeems for money? So dodo or ben dodo, right? He's going to come and he's going to help his nephew or his cousin in time of distress. So if you had to come and your person had to come and sell his properties, now he has to come. The dodo, ben dodo, will come and be achim yigalo. He will come and redeem it. He'll pay for him. And that's only mina av. That's not mina em. So zimning gzera shava dodo dodo. So when it says eshet, right, the ervat dodo gila, it means it's tafka from the father, not from the mother. So says the Gemara, how do we know over there by the geula, right, by the redemption, by money? It's only by the father, not by the mother. So Amar Krami mishpachto yigalem must be from his fathers, from his family. Mishpachat av kruya mishpacha, mishpachat em ena kruya mishpacha. Only the mishpacha of the father is called mishpacha. Mishpachat em is not called mishpacha. So says the Gemara, Vatanya is none. Yeah, this is powerful. Yeah, always goes after the father. Yeah, everything, by the way. So says the Gemara, it's that which we learned in the Mishnah. There's a Mishnah later on. Imagine right now somebody was in Medinat Hayam. And they told him, Meta ishtecha, the wife died. So imagine a person comes and he said, they told him the wife died. So what happens? Nasa achota me'avia. So he's allowed to come, and no, not that he was allowed to come. He went and he got married to her sister from the father. Yeah? Okay? So again, that means remember that sisters is only during the lifetime, right? So now again, he got married to the sister from the father, right, of his wife. So basically he got married to his sister-in-law, but it was basically a half-sister because it was only the sister from the father. Then what happened? They come back and they tell him, Ishtecha shniya also meta. Yeah? So he comes and he says, Benasa. Yeah? He comes and he says, Benasa achota mi'ima. So now he comes and he says, now he got married to achota from the mother. Yeah? So now what happened? That's the picture, by the way, the complicating picture there. Because that's what he says. So he says, Shuv chazru v'amru, meta shlishit. The third one died. Yeah? This guy's a mamash, he's got yeah. Yeah, he says, meta shlishit. Yeah, he gave a katlani. Yeah, v'nasa achota me'avia. Again, he got married to her sister from the father. And then again, meta ishtecha revi'it. The fourth one died now. V'nasa achota me'ima from the mother. Mutar barishona u'bashlishit u'bachamishit. He's going to be permitted in the first one, third one, and the fifth one, because all of them are not family members. Yes. What does that mean? Here you have the picture. If you don't have the picture, you don't understand a word. You know what? Let me try to see it. So what happened is like this, right? Yaakov and Leah are ish ve'isha. Okay? Yaakov and Leah. We're starting from over here. Yaakov and Leah. Okay? Are ish ve'isha. Okay? V'tele Leah liYaakov et Dinah. So they have Dinah from Yaakov and Leah. Okay? V'titgaresh Leah miYaakov. So she got divorced from Yaakov. Okay? V'tinaseh Leah leChetzron. So she got married to Chetzron. And they had Yocheved. Yikach Chetzron. Chetzron took another wife, Keturah. Okay? And they had Sarah. Okay? Then ותתגרש כתורה מחצרון, ותינשא כתורה לבתואל. So she got married to Betuel, and they had Rivka. Okay, and then Betuel took another wife, and her name was Hannah, and they had Milka. So each one of these. So Dinah is the sister of Yocheved, mitzad the mother. Sarah is the sister of Yocheved, mitzad the father. Rivka is the sister of Sarah, mitzad the mother. Rivka is the sister of Milka, mitzad the father. Right? So you have achot mina av, achot mina em, achot mina av. You understand? Like, that's how you have it. So now what happens is like this, right? Oh, fine. So Reuven got married first to Milka. Reuven is to Milka. So this is the first one. And he halcha lemedinat hayam.
Can you go down a little bit? No, go down. Sorry, go up. A little bit more.
Okay. So one more time. So Reuven gets married to Milka first. She went to Medinat Hayam, Kaddish.
No, he went to Medinat Hayam.
No, she went to Medinat Hayam. She went to Medinat Hayam. מה? הוא שלח אותה להורים שלה. Why? He sent her to her family. Right? That she should enjoy herself. Right? So what happened? They went and they said she died. Yeah? So what happens? So now, it doesn't matter whether he had children or not. It doesn't matter about her. So now Reuven comes. So they said that she died, Kaddish. Reuven comes and he takes Rivka, which is achota me'avia. So Reuven now gets Rivka. Remember, Rivka is achota mi Betuel, so it's from the father. Ze achota me Abba shela. Correct? Vadai, because she died. Right? Reuven got married to Milka. Milka went to Medinat Hayam, Meta. So then he got married to Rivka. Rivka is the achot mitzad Abba. Chazak u'baruch. Rivka went to Medinat Hayam, Meta. So now he got married to Sarah. Sarah is achota mi Ima. Sarah went to Medinat Hayam ומתה. אז הוא התחתן עם יוכבד. יוכבד זה אחותה מאבא. Right? יוכבד הלכה למדינת הים ומתה. הוא הלך להתחתן לדינה. דינה זה מהאימא. מה? כן, מהאימא. Okay. So now, after all this, it says over here, right? אחותה מאמא. Fine. וחזרו ואמרו לו, כולן קיימות. And then all of a sudden, all of a sudden they're all alive. Right? Vare kulan nesuot lo. What? הם באו מבית דין, והם באו לבית דין, שתי עדים. לא, הם לא יצאו איתו קשר. Yeah? What happened was, in the olden days, remember, it was very difficult. Yeah? So therefore, they did...
היום בן אדם שהוא נהדר, לא שנייה עכשיו אומרים שהוא מת. ומתירים לאישה...
ודאי, because there you have to be מתיר לאישה. Here I'm being מתיר לגבר. It's הרבה יותר קל. הרבה יותר קל. Yeah, it's much easier.
וכולם הלכו למדינת הים?
כולם הלכו למדינת הים.
יענו שלח את כולם.
יענו שלח את כולם, וכולם לא חזרו. So now, no, so says the Gemara, listen to the Gemara. Says the Gemara, מותר ראובן בראשונה, שלישית וחמישית. ראשונה.
האורגינלית. אבא.
ראשונה. לא, מצד האמא.
למה ראשונה?
ראשונה, שלישית ורביעית. כולם אחיות מהאמא. אחיות מהאמא, he's allowed to get married to. The ones from the father, he's not allowed to get married to. So therefore, Milka, number 1, Sarah, number 3, and Dinah, number 5. He's allowed to get married to, he's allowed to stay married to them.
Really?
No, they're sisters, each one of them is sisters from the mother. Milka, no, you're right, they're not related. Because Milka to Sarah is not related, right? Milka to Sarah is not related, and Sarah to Dinah is not related. You're right, they're all not related at all. You're right. 100%.
Now the Achot Isha.
One second. Says the Gemara, upotrot sarotehen. What does it mean, potrot sarotehen? Right? Im met belo banim. If they died without children, right? That means they did the chalitza, the yibum, right? So then what's going to happen is that now they're going to be potrot, they're tsarot. Okay? So the other shtaima acheron, iftarom chalitza v'yibum, they're going to be permitted to everybody. Now, you're not allowed to, he's not allowed to stay married to Rivka or to Yocheved, right? Why? Because they're achayot, right? Each one is achayot. Now, now, what happens if he died without children? So the yibum, right, of a yavam is not going to be poter sarata mina yibum, right? That means if he dies, he's not going to be mekayem mitzvat yibum because there was no kiddushin tafes. Right, that means basically because since it was mamash, it was a sister, right, and it was during the lifetime, so there was no kiddushin tofsim. Except for if the yavam came and he had relations with Rivka or Yocheved, number 2 or number 4, since they weren't married to him because it was be'emet kiddushin lo tofsim, except for they didn't do yibum, so therefore it's not going to be put at anybody else. Okay. What happens if he actually did have relations with the second woman after the first one did be'emet die? So let's say be'emet the first one did die. Milka died. Really, be'emet she died, right? And then he had relations with Rivka. Mutar b'shniya v'revit. So then he's going to be permitted in the second one and the fourth one. Upotrot sarotehen. V'asur b'shlishi v'chamishit. Then he's permitted in the shlishit v'chamishit. Because that means that the real marriage to Rivka was a viable marriage. It was a good marriage. Because Milka did die. So Milka did die. He got married to Rivka. Now the marriage to Sarah is not a good marriage. And now the marriage to Yocheved is a good marriage. But the marriage to Dinah is not a good marriage. That means it all depends on who be'emet died and not. Are they be'emet sisters or not? And therefore, that's what's going to happen. Okay? Let me stop. And we'll continue with Hashem on Sunday.